At 5:16 local time, the sea appears perfectly calm. The carrier moves at a steady pace, and the flight deck is quiet. Morning watch rotations are halfway complete. Beneath the surface, there is nothing to see. No wake, no disruption, only open water. Then the sound shifts. Inside the sonar room, a low-frequency return slips into the headset feed. Faint, controlled, and immediately out of place. It is not marine life, and it is not ordinary background noise. The tone lingers longer than it should, clean and intentional. The operator says nothing at first. He adjusts the gain. The signal remains. Another sweep confirms it. The contact is deep, moving, and picking up speed. On the display, a thin line begins to extend forward. Its vector is stable, its heading exact. This is not drift, this is not debris. Whatever is down there has selected its course. At 5:17, the console light changes from green to amber. The shift travels through the ship faster than any alarm could. In the Combat Information Center, conversations stop in the middle of sentences. A watch officer straightens. A hand pauses above a keyboard. No one needs to raise their voice. New subsurface contact, comes the report. Level and controlled. The carrier does not alter course. Not yet. More sensors begin feeding into the picture. Passive arrays sharpen the bearing. Timestamps narrow. The contact speed rises again, smooth and consistent. No random movement, no uncertainty. This is powered motion. On the bridge, the captain studies the repeater in silence. The data is already telling the story. The contact is approaching from depth, holding a constant intercept line. It is still far out, still beyond any defensive trigger point. But distance does not erase intent. At 5:18, the ship's posture changes internally. Not full alert, not even close. Just enough that every critical station is now occupied by someone whose mind is no longer on the routine of the morning. On the hangar deck, a maintenance crew pauses as the lighting subtly shifts in tone. Above them, the flight deck stays motionless. Aircraft remain parked, chained, silent. From the outside, nothing seems different. Inside, everything has changed. The contact maintains depth, then begins a gradual climb. Not sudden, not reckless, but measured, designed to preserve guidance and energy. Whoever sent it did not want raw speed. They wanted precision. Classified track, the order comes. The system runs comparisons, discards false matches, and narrows the possibilities. This is no exercise. At 5:20, the classification locks in. No one makes an announcement. The label on the screen is enough. The room absorbs it without visible reaction. There is no shock, only confirmation. A torpedo, not lost, not drifting, not moving at random. It is following a clean solution directly toward the carrier's projected path. There is still distance. There are still options. There is still time. But now the margin is real, not theoretical. On an escort ship off the starboard quarter, the same silence settles in. Data links flicker with new inputs. The formation tightens almost too subtly to notice. Steel shifts around the carrier like instinct. No weapons are launched, no countermeasures are released yet. This stage is about observation. At 5:21, the torpedo increases speed once more. That is when the room changes. Not emotionally, not outwardly, procedurally. The track is no longer treated as a possible threat. It is now active and committed. The calculations collapse into a single line pointing in only one direction, toward the carrier. A junior officer looks at the range readout, then looks away. He already understands. The torpedo is still several minutes out, but it has crossed the line where its purpose can no longer be questioned. The captain speaks at last. One sentence, calm and exact. No one asks him to repeat it. Systems acknowledge. Displays update. Somewhere deep inside the ship, mechanisms unlock and wait, perfectly still. They move only when ordered, never before. At 5:22, the ocean above the torpedo remains undisturbed. Anyone on a commercial vessel miles away would see nothing except open water. No plume, no trace. No clue that steel is cutting through the depths toward one of the most heavily protected ships on the planet. Inside the carrier, nobody is watching the sea. Every eye is fixed on the track. Because by now, the water is only the backdrop. The real story is the line on the screen, and it is moving with unmistakable purpose. At 5:23, the numbers begin to tighten. Range drops in neat, predictable intervals. Bearing remains steady. Depth stays disciplined, just below the layer where surface noise would interfere. Whoever programmed the weapon understood the ocean well. This was not a desperate launch. In the Combat Information Center, the track is no longer handled as a contact. It is treated as a system. Fresh inputs arrive in quiet succession. Speed, depth, thermal gradient, bearing drift. Every update sharpens the picture and removes another piece of doubt. The torpedo is not searching, it is navigating. The carrier deliberately stays on course. A sudden maneuver now would create more problems than it solves. Evasion comes later, if it comes at all. For the moment, understanding matters more than motion. On the screen, a narrow projection line extends from the torpedo's icon. It crosses the carrier's predicted path, not at the bow, not at the stern, but directly amidships. No one reacts to that detail. It only confirms what they already know. At 5:24, the ship's data links light up again. Escort vessels feed in confirming tracks. Different sensors, different angles, the same conclusion. No divergence, no uncertainty. The kill chain is intact. The weapon's guidance remains steady. In the sonar room, the operator adjusts the filters, stripping away background clutter and isolating the signature. Now the sound is unmistakable. A mechanical pulse, steady and efficient, moving through the water with clear intent. Not the restless tone of a seeker hunting blindly. This one already knows exactly where it is going. The time to intercept drops below 4 minutes. No one says it out loud. The carrier's defensive architecture moves to the next layer. Not force, but awareness. Algorithms recalculate intercept windows in real time. Countermeasure envelopes appear, vanish, then return in new shapes. Options are analyzed, not chosen. Every path carries a cost. At 5:25, the torpedo shifts its depth by just a few meters. A minor adjustment, almost invisible, but significant. It slips into a cleaner acoustic channel, reducing interference from surface turbulence. That single refinement says more than any signal ever could. This is not a warning. This is a calculated solution. On the bridge, the captain studies the updated track without expression. He has seen patterns like this before, in simulations, in controlled exercises. This time, there is no simulation. The escort ships adjust again. Their spacing tightens just enough to create overlapping coverage. No vessel breaks formation, no one moves ahead. This is not pursuit, it is containment. At 5:26, the torpedo's speed levels out. That matters more than acceleration. A steady velocity means the guidance system has settled. The weapon is no longer correcting aggressively. It has confidence in its path. Inside the Combat Information Center, a watch officer notices the shift. He says nothing. The data explains itself. The range continues to close. 3 minutes. Below deck, a sailor quietly secures a loose tool. Another tightens a strap. No orders are given. These actions come from experience, from patterns learned over time. Above, the flight deck remains still. Aircraft stay chained in place. There will be no launch now. Air power does not resolve what is happening beneath the surface at this stage. At 5:27, the torpedo climbs again. Slow, controlled. It is positioning for its final phase. This is where the sequence becomes hardest to disrupt. Passive tracking edges toward the possibility of active guidance. The weapon is close enough to activate its own sensors at any moment. If that happens, response time shrinks dramatically. The ship prepares for that possibility in silence. No alarms, no sudden noise, nothing that signals urgency from the outside. Time to intercept drops below 2 minutes. On the tactical display, the solution cone narrows into a thin wedge. The space for maneuvering shrinks. Fewer options remain, and each one demands commitment. This is the point where hesitation becomes costly. At 5:28, the torpedo holds its line. No erratic motion, no sudden acceleration, just steady approach. It has entered the phase where physics begins to dominate. Even without guidance, its momentum would carry it dangerously close. That is the reality the crew is operating within. The captain gives another brief order. No explanation follows. Everyone who needs to understand already does. Systems respond. Counters begin to arm but remain inactive. They will only be used if necessary, because the next move will determine whether this remains a silent exchange of tracking and discipline or becomes something far more intense. And now, time is no longer counted in minutes. At 5:29, calculations stop being theoretical. The range passes the final buffer where hesitation could still be absorbed. From here on, every second removes another option. The track remains precise. Bearing unchanged, depth exact. The torpedo is no longer approaching the carrier's path. It is converging directly with it. Inside the Combat Information Center, the display updates again. The intercept corridor tightens into a narrow band that leaves no room for interpretation. The line does not wander. It does not test alternatives. It commits fully. Time to intercept drops below 90 seconds. No one says it out loud. The number does not need to be spoken. It is there, clear and final. A silent countdown. On the bridge, the captain shifts slightly, eyes still fixed on the repeater. He does not ask for input. The options have already been reviewed, weighed, and either set aside or held in reserve. This is no longer a discussion. The torpedo makes a small correction, almost imperceptible. A slight change in depth, a subtle adjustment in heading. The movement is precise, not reactive. It compensates for a variable introduced earlier by the carrier, even without a course change. That detail matters. It means the system is not guessing. At 5:30, the escorts reach their final positions. Coverage overlaps fully. Distances compress. The formation settles into a structure designed to absorb impact without amplifying disorder. No ship accelerates. No ship turns sharply. They hold. The carrier remains steady. A sudden maneuver now could create unwanted acoustic signatures or disrupt coordination. Movement is still an option, but only at the exact right moment. That moment has not come yet. In the sonar room, the operator hears the signal sharpen. It is no longer just present. It demands attention. The mechanical rhythm carries a clarity that removes all doubt. This is not a system searching in uncertainty. It is following a path it trusts. Time to intercept drops below 60 seconds. This is the threshold. Beyond it, physics takes control. Reaction windows shrink to almost nothing. Defensive layers compress so tightly that a single misstep can cascade instantly. The captain speaks again. One short sentence. No raised voice, no dramatic tone. It does not reference targets or force. It defines a shift from observation to readiness. Across the ship, acknowledgements move quietly. Systems transition, safeties release. Doors that remain sealed under all normal conditions unlock and wait. Deep below, a mechanism comes to life. Not active yet, not deployed, simply ready. At 5:31, the torpedo rises into its final band. This is where many systems reveal themselves. Then comes the moment when many systems would reveal themselves with a burst of active sonar, a sudden acceleration, a last attempt to lock in before countermeasures spread through the water. This one does neither. It stays silent. That restraint is more dangerous than speed. The carrier's sensors search for even the smallest sign of active emission. Nothing appears. The torpedo is relying on inertial guidance, stored targeting data, and its own confidence in where the carrier will be when it arrives. Time to intercept drops below 40 seconds. There is no advantage left in waiting, but there is still danger in moving too soon. The captain looks at the clock once, and only once. Then his eyes return to the track. He no longer needs the display to tell him how much time is left. He gives the order. Short, exact, final. This is the last instant in which control still exists on this side of the encounter. At 5:32, the ship responds. Not with violence, not with spectacle. No plume breaks the surface, no launch cuts across the sea, no blast tears through the water. Instead, the carrier goes after the real vulnerability, guidance. The response is measured, layered, and carefully limited. The purpose is not to destroy. The purpose is to confuse. To break the certainty the torpedo has depended on. To place doubt inside a solution that had, until now, remained clean and stable. The systems come online in sequence, not all at once. Every step is calibrated to reveal as little as possible. This is not a display. It is discipline under pressure. For the first time since detection, the torpedo reacts. Its line wavers, only slightly, but enough to matter. In the sonar operator's headset, the sound changes. Subtle, yet unmistakable. The steady mechanical rhythm stumbles, recovers, then hesitates again. The torpedo is still fast, it is still dangerous, but it is no longer completely certain. The countdown continues. 30 seconds. The torpedo tries to correct. It shifts depth again, sharper this time. The adjustment lacks the smooth precision it had before. It is no longer elegant. It is compensating. That tells its own story. The solution it trusted is beginning to slip. The carrier holds course, no sharp turn, no visible panic, because this phase is not about outrunning steel underwater. It is about forcing a machine to question the picture it believes. And in the next few seconds, that doubt will decide everything. At 5:33, certainty begins to crack. Not instantly, not dramatically, just enough to change the outcome. In the sonar room, the tone shifts again, this time unevenly. The clean, controlled rhythm that defined the contact for the last several minutes starts to break apart. It remains present, remains fast, remains dangerous, but it no longer sounds confident. The countermeasures continue, layered and restrained. Nothing violent, nothing excessive. Only enough interference to make the torpedo doubt the image it has been following since launch. The torpedo answers by climbing. It is a natural response, a move toward clearer water and better returns. But the water above is no longer telling the truth. What the torpedo expects to detect and what its sensors are receiving no longer match. On the display, the track bends. At first, only by a few degrees, a correction based on the assumption that the problem is temporary. The torpedo is still trying to recover its original solution. The carrier does not move. At 5:34, the torpedo adjusts again, this time with more urgency. Speed begins to fluctuate. Depth starts to oscillate. These are not signs of collapse. They are signs of a system working much harder than intended. The escorts keep formation. No ship breaks pattern, no one relaxes. No one assumes the problem is solved. This stage is delicate. One bad input, one overcorrection, and the torpedo could regain a clean lock. Inside the Combat Information Center, a watch officer notes the change in behavior. He does not smile. He does not ease up. He understands exactly what this phase means. This is when guided systems become less predictable. The torpedo's guidance tries to recover control. It sweeps wider, sampling the acoustic field in a final attempt to rebuild confidence. That effort costs efficiency. Every sweep drains energy. Every correction trades momentum for information. The intercept time begins to stretch. Not by much, but enough to matter. At 5:35, the sound in the sonar operator's headset fractures again. The once solid pulse now carries gaps, tiny pauses, brief moments of hesitation as the system recalculates against a picture that no longer resembles what it expected. The torpedo is still moving toward the carrier, but it is no longer moving with certainty. The carrier's response remains steady. No escalation, no extra layers added, everything stays disciplined, designed to let the torpedo unravel its own solution. This is not about overwhelming the system, it is about outlasting its confidence. At 5:36, the torpedo makes its largest correction yet. The track pulls noticeably to port, then shifts back again. The movement is no longer smooth, it is reactive. The weapon is now chasing a solution that keeps slipping just beyond its reach. Inside the Combat Information Center, the projected intercept point drifts off the carrier's path. Not by much, not enough to feel safe yet, but no longer certain. The captain watches the display without reacting. No comments, no acknowledgement. The situation isn't over until the contact is no longer a contact. The torpedo reduces speed, not a failure, not a shutdown, but a deliberate shift. Power is redirected towards sensing and processing. That decision costs it range, time, and flexibility. At 5:37, the sound begins to fade, not vanish, just weaken. The mechanical pulse stretches thin, worn down by constant corrections and wasted energy. The weapon is still active, but its picture of the world is shrinking. The ocean it once read clearly has become misleading. The torpedo dips slightly, then levels off, another attempt to stabilize. It doesn't work. The guidance loop begins to collapse. Without a clear solution, the system defaults to search behavior. The clean intercept line dissolves into a widening arc. On the display, the track drifts away from the carrier's projected path. The countdown to impact stops decreasing. Now it begins to move in the opposite direction. At 5:38, the contact brakes lock completely. The signal drops below reliable detection. One last return flickers, then disappears into background noise and shifting thermal layers. The room remains still. No celebration, no release of tension, just waiting. Seconds pass. No reacquisition. Another sweep confirms it. The torpedo has lost the carrier. Whether it runs out of energy, shuts itself down, or sinks into silence no longer matters. The threat is gone. Only then does the captain give the order to ease posture. Systems power down in sequence, retracing the same steps they took on the way up. Safeties re-engage, mechanisms return to standby. Above the surface, the ocean looks unchanged, calm, empty, undisturbed. But beneath it, the most critical moment of the morning has already passed. And it ended not with force, but with a system realizing it no longer understood its environment. At 5:39, the tension fades. Not complete silence. Ships are never truly quiet. But the pressure that compressed every decision into seconds is gone. Displays stabilize. The last irregular returns dissolve into background noise. The ocean takes back its secrets. Still, no one celebrates. Inside the Combat Information Center, the posture relaxes gradually, step by step. Not fully, not immediately. Everything remains controlled, as if the ship itself is confirming the danger is truly over before letting go. The carrier stays on course. That detail matters. A success that forces deviation is still a compromise. This one does not. The ship continues exactly where it was going, at the same speed, with the same purpose. The escorts remain close. Their spacing does not change. No one breaks formation. No one moves ahead. The structure holds until certainty replaces assumption. At 5:41, confirmation arrives across multiple systems. No reacquisition, no residual signals, no secondary contacts. The torpedo is gone. Whether it exhausted its energy, shut down, or drifted into the deep will never be publicly confirmed. It doesn't need to be. The outcome is already clear. The captain gives a brief order, not to respond, not to pursue, but to record. Across the ship, systems begin collecting everything. Timestamps, sensor logs, signal patterns, environmental data. Every second of the encounter is preserved, secured, and stored. This is not about statements. It is about memory. Below deck, analysts are already reconstructing the event. The origin is traced back. Speed profiles are mapped. Guidance behavior is compared against known patterns. The picture sharpens quickly. The source is not a mystery. It never was. Above deck, routine returns. Chains are checked. Maintenance resumes. To anyone watching from a distance, the ship appears unchanged. Just another carrier moving through open water. But inside, something has shifted. At 5:47, airborne surveillance assets quietly reposition. No announcement, no explanation needed. Attention turns outward, not with emotion, but with calculation. Beneath the surface, the launch platform, wherever it is, has already been identified. Not engaged, identified. That distinction matters, because what just happened was not a battle. It was a demonstration. Proof that restraint is not weakness. That a modern carrier does not need to escalate to control the situation. The other side learns without a single impact. They know their action was detected. They know it was tracked. They know it failed. And they understand why. At 6:02, the ship fully returns to routine. Watches rotate, conversations resume. Small details of daily life come back into place. The crew moves forward, as trained to do. But the event itself does not end here. The data collected in those minutes will carry forward into simulations, into training, into future decisions. What failed today will shape how the next situation is handled, somewhere else, at another time. Because the message delivered was not emotional. It was precise. You can act, it will be detected, you can aim. The chain can be disrupted. And if things escalate further, it will happen with full awareness of how visible every step is. The carrier continues forward. Same heading, same purpose. Behind it, the water closes. Above it, the sky remains clear. And somewhere below, a system built to strike disappears without ever reaching its target. No impact, no damage, just a quiet shift in balance. And a reminder that sometimes the strongest signal is the one that makes no sound at all.